Welcome to Get and Keep Biz, a video learning series. My name's Tim McMahon. We'll be talking about consumer behavior today. And consumer behavior really is a study of the process involved when individuals, select, purchase, use, and even dispose of products, services, or ideas and such. Because this is all about satisfying their needs and desires. So we're going to talk about a number of different things today. Not the least of which is the idea of the difference between needs and wants. Need is a basic biological motive. A want is the way we've learned to satisfy the need. And this is where marketers introduce their talents and abilities, and that is to make a need into a want so that people will inherently have needs, but marketers motivate their wants. That's the difference. So we can actually identify the need more clearly so that the consumer will want it. We've seen this slide before. It's utilitarian and hedonic. These are two basic kinds of needs, one functional, practical, the other experiential or emotional. And then we've also talked about this concept from Daniel Goleman. There are two fundamentally different ways of knowing that construct our mental life, and one is emotional and one is rational. Kind of lines up with what we talked about in the previous slide, doesn't it? The rational is the mode which we are typically conscious of, thoughtful, able to ponder, logical, used to support our decisions. However, emotional is impulsive and powerful, maybe more powerful, well, certainly more powerful than rational, sometimes illogical, much quicker, acts in milliseconds, has strong sense of certainty without significant evidence. That is what emotional is, and emotional drives probably most of what we think about when it comes to purchase. And the marketer's challenge is to understand how to trigger that emotional response and cause someone to actually move on a decision, not necessarily employing a practical or rational approach. The brain operates with two ways of thinking, according to Daniel Kahneman, fast and slow. And when we think of ourselves, we identify with the slow, but it's the fast system. The fast system that dominates our thinking. Fast system, slow system, two ways to go. And the fast, it's automatic, ever active, sorting through feelings, memories. We make decisions with scant information sometimes, just enough to say, yeah, it looks right to me, let's go with it. Slow kicks in when we really can't be comfortable with the first decision. This system concentrates, reasons, performs complex mental tasks, and then it makes choices, and basically is in charge of self-control to some degree. People identify with this one, but the fact of the matter is this is where most of the decision-making is made. It's in the fast system. We make it quickly. A part of it is just we're bombarded with information. System 2 is too slow and effortful also. So to sort through every decision, it would take forever. System 1 effortlessly originates impressions and feelings that are main sources of the explicit choices of the System 2. Fast, that's our hero. Slow, that's the supporting actress. She's a diva. Requires attention sometimes that we have to give. On the slower System 2, we can construct thoughts in an orderly series of steps. The diverse operations of System 2, however, easily interrupted because it's a task that's difficult to do, and we are really not prone to do difficult tasks. And the social environment around us, particularly in the selling environment, doesn't really lend itself to that sort of activity. The plot of Fast and Slow, according to Kahneman, both systems are active when we are awake. Yes, but System 1 continuously generates suggestions, impressions, intuitions, intentions, feelings to System 2. System 2 then ends up generating beliefs and generating these kinds of things that we will call voluntary actions, or in some cases involuntary actions, or we seemingly can't tell why we did something, but we did it. When all goes smoothly, which is most of the time, System 2 adopts System 1 suggestions with little or no modification. So people generally believe their impressions and act on their desires. That is usually. I want you to understand all this because what we're trying to understand is how the consumer behaves. That's what this is about, and what causes this to happen.
Chances are there's one man who's had a hand in the way you spend your money virtually every day. From helping to market the coffee you may drink, to the car you may drive, to the jet we may all soon fly in. His name is Dr. Clotaire Ripaille, and although he may seem more than just a little bit French, he's an American citizen who understands that what makes his fellow consumers tick is a lot more than just silly commercials.
All the people that say, oh, if you have a good advertising, you can force people to buy something. I mean, we're not that dumb. It doesn't work very long.
We're the most consumer-driven society in the world. Do you think that a lot of our companies get it wrong?
A lot of them. A lot of them.
Ripai advises his corporate clients that to be successful in the marketplace, what they really have to do is appeal to our earliest emotions. That's his specialty, helping open our wallets by divining what he calls our first imprints.
What I mean by imprint is...
First memory.
Yeah, the first time you create the mental structure in your brain.
When you're still in that formative 1 to 3 year old stage?
It varies because it depends what. For example, when you are 2-year-old, you imprint coffee for the first time. Interesting. Because 2, you don't drink coffee. So what do you imprint? The aroma.
Aroma triggers fond memories of home for Americans, so in the late 1980s, Ripai helped the makers of Folgers build an entire marketing campaign around that notion because he believed the best way to sell coffee was to actually sell memories of coffee. It's a concept that's withstood the test of time, and ever since, Ripai's fingerprints can be found all over the American marketplace, often in ways that you may not see, but you can certainly feel.
Bobby, the quicker picker-upper.
Take selling something as simple as paper towels. Our intellect may tell us that quicker picker-upper cleanliness is all that matters, but Ripai's guidance to Procter & Gamble was to lose Rosie the waitress and use Mom at home instead to appeal to a woman's primal instinct to take proper care of her family. And his work isn't just all about advertising. Companies will sometimes build their products based in part on his discoveries. Recognize this? Daimler Chrysler found that American women want a warm, safe feeling from their cars, while many men are attracted to something with a tougher look. So with a little help from Ripai, the PT Cruiser was born.
You know, and I know some people look at this and just say, it's ugly.
That's right. Some people love it, some people hate it. Nobody is neutral.
And that's a good thing?
That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. We want the intensity.
Tapping into such intensity is Dr. Ripai's calling. He's a psychologist and anthropologist who earned his PhD in his native France and who came to America more than 25 years ago not to analyze patients, but to psychoanalyze consumers. He says he was drawn to this country because of what he calls its adolescent culture. It's the only place in the world where you can pursue your dreams and where success is defined by the financial reward that follows.
That's why I chose to become American. You know, I'd rather be part of an adolescent culture than a senile culture. So there's no doubt about that.
In fact, you once said, didn't you, that we're not a country so much as we are a dream.
Absolutely. We have big dreams, you know, and we're only interested in what is impossible. And we make it. Because other people say, no, it's not possible. It's not possible? Let's do it.
It's that same kind of drive that attracts executives from all over the world to his French-style mansion outside New York City, because as one client, Steve Bechara, says, for a fee of around $250,000, Ripai offers something traditional marketing gurus could never match.
He drills into past experiences and reveals what influence that has on their assumptions or perceptions about a product.
Bechara is in charge of marketing for a small company called Turbo Chef, which wants to redesign its commercial oven, now found in fast food restaurants, into something Americans feel they have to have in their home kitchens. Given that mission, Bechara, who's been in the business for 20 years, thought Ripai was the perfect man for the job.
Some may perceive him as a mad scientist, and others think that he's brilliant and is able to provide certain insights into the cultural marketplace.
I have to ask you to try very, very hard not to be too intelligent.
This is how Ripai does it. He calls them imprint sessions, a series of gatherings with a cross-section of consumers.
Any other reactions? Any other feeling?
We watched as he went to work for Turbo Chef, and at first, it looked like the focus groups most market researchers use.
There you go. Who said chef?
But it soon turned into something far different. He watched from behind a one-way mirror while everyone was asked to recall memories of growing up around the kitchen. Ripai wanted only to strip away their conditioned responses and get them ready for the most important part of the sessions, the last hour, where no focus group ever goes. He calls it discovering the reptile.
3 brains: the cortex, the limbic, and the reptilian. The cortex is intelligence, and I don't care. The limbic is emotional and is complex. The reptilian is the key, and that's where I want to go.
Rapai believes our reptilian brain, that part that drives our primal need for survival and comfort, always wins when deciding what to buy. And to discover that, he takes away the chairs and takes everyone on a trip down Freudian Lane.
I would like to try to remember to go back when you were children. The first experience about being fed, I remember my mother or my grandmother, the smell, the aroma. I want to understand the real first time as a child that you have been experiencing that. Even if you are resistant, half an hour on the floor listening to a relaxation tape, your heartbeat starts changing, your body temperature starts changing. And when they go through the process, they say, you know, something else came back that I didn't remember for like 40 years. Amazing.
The point of all this is to find the hot button that makes us want a product. Rapai calls that the code, like the word aroma for coffee. It's often a simple thought or phrase that becomes the guidepost from design to marketing, so our unconscious will say to us, stop thinking about it, just buy it.
Yep.
You know, I can understand how that might work with something as visceral to the senses as coffee, but how the heck do you make that work with an oven?
Anything, if there is a word, you have a first imprint. But an oven is so much related to food, to mother.
I knew we'd get to mother somewhere.
Of course, what is inside here? This is maybe the first oven. I mean, the food was always at right temperature there.
Is what he's doing revolutionary? Have you ever heard of it being done before?
It's revolutionary in market research, that's for sure. And there aren't many people that will dig as deep or who are as willing to go into this fuzzy voodoo territory.
The kitchen is surrounded by the two.
That fuzzy voodoo territory is what TurboChef hopes will help build a whole new product. After 10 imprint sessions, they discovered the code, which is highly secret and which they will only say has something to do with the warmth and comfort that comes from home cooking. The company thinks one way to evoke that feeling may be to shed its industrial image for a look much like these prototypes, a modern version of Mother and apple pie.
Did you ever think you'd be using a little Freudian theory to sell an oven?
No, but I've always had a sense that you really have to win the battle of the mind and what people are thinking. And so the better we understand their mind and their behavior, the more successful we'll be.
And sometimes that special insight is as simple as taking us back to the future. This is a prototype of Boeing's newest commercial jet, the Dreamliner 787, which focuses heavily on passenger comfort, from the design of the windows to the lighting, even to the feel of the jet when you enter. Clotaire Rapai was one of only a few consultants to work with Boeing. He ran those signature imprint sessions of his, and the company hopes they will ultimately reshape the way we think and feel about air travel. And if that works for you, you can tip your hat to a Frenchman who thinks he's just about figured us out.
Another psychological perspective. Psychologist Abraham Maslow sought to understand personal growth and how people attain spiritual peak performances. That was his original study intent. He's developed the famous pyramid we'll see here shortly. Marketers have adapted that model to understand consumer motivations. So we think of it as a progression from meeting our basic needs all the way up to our higher level needs. At each level, then, the person seeks different kinds of benefits. The basic level, or the basic lesson here of Maslow's hierarchy is that we must satisfy basic needs before we can move to the next. So we begin at the lower level. You can study this when you look at the deck. And it's basically basic needs. It's very difficult to cause somebody to really think that they're going to be self-actualizing and really operating at a very high level when, in fact, they are, not even safe. They're not protected. They don't have food. That's kind of basic stuff that has to be in place. And that was Maslow's basic concept, and it works. It's highly informative for us to understand human behavior. While basic needs must be met first, the truly lasting bonds are formed at a deeper level, or should we say that higher level that Maslow showed us. The challenge is to capture what it takes to lead customers to places where they don't always need to know where they go.
It was clear that the number one mission of Nike is to serve the athlete. But it was in the late 80s that the definition of athlete got expanded way beyond just the professional endorsers. Nike's often credited with the jogging boom in the United States because people had just started really running for fitness. That hadn't happened so much before. All Nike ever wanted to do was inspire people to participate in sports. It's a pretty good mission to have as a company.
Actually, the inspiration for this came from a man that was about to be executed for murder in Utah. And his final words to the firing squad were, "Let's do it." And so I thought, well, I like the do it part of it.
That was not the version that I heard when I arrived at Nike. I'm sure they didn't want anyone to really know that that was the genesis of the phrase.
None of us really paid that much attention. We thought, yeah, that'd work. And I think what happened, and it was sort of like a lot of things in life, is sometimes it's the most inadvertent things that you don't really see that are, people started reading things into it much more than sport.
I think they were amazed and delighted, but they would admit totally shocked at just the impact it had.
I think it's a good thing to live by.
Well, just do it.
Let's make it seem like anyone can do this, you know?
It kind of kicked me in the pants to, get, rejuvenated with my career.
Just do it. Do what you want.
I was a senior in high school, and it actually gave me courage to ask this girl out to the prom that I wanted to ask, and it worked.
People were applying it to just everything they had been putting off or procrastinating about or avoiding dealing with. I had women writing to us saying, "I finally left the bum." They were like getting divorces based on the "Just Do It" slogan.
I started getting letters from people that had been having emotional problems or all sorts of issues where somehow this line and this way of looking at the world meant something much deeper than what we were even talking about, There was a woman, Janet Champ, working with Charlotte Moore in our agency, and these two creative people started talking from their heart, from their personal experience about things publicly. They brought themselves to this discussion of what it means to be a woman in today's world and a woman trying to find sense in the world and empowerment.
They just put it all out there. It was very, very personal. I believe it was even a picture of Janet's mother that was in the ad.
I was speaking at the University of Oregon, and there was this woman who said, "Did you do that insert for the women that talked about the women? Oh my God, I tore that out, handed that to my daughter 3 weeks ago and said, that's what I was trying to tell you."
If you let me play.
If you let me play sports.
I will like myself more. I'll have more self-confidence. If you let me play sports.
If you let me play.
If you let me play. I'll be 60% less likely to get breast cancer. I will suffer less depression.
If you let me play sports.
I will be more likely to leave a man who beats
If you
me.
let me play.
I'll be less likely to get pregnant before I want to.
I will learn.
I will learn what it means to be strong.
To be strong.
If you let me play.
Play sports.
If you let me play sports.
So this is the consumer decision journey. You have seen it before when we looked at the previous deck, and this is how this works. It's an activation, kind of a model. We begin with that trigger system over there, and then we move to collecting information, making a decision. The Google's 0 moment of truth, if you recall that, and that's the time before the actual purchase. Lots of information, data is available for here for analysis. And then P&G identified this first moment of truth when brands competing for attention actually have a chance to win or lose in the marketplace. And then P&G's second moment of truth is when a consumer actually comes in touch with the experience and starts to evaluate the product or the activity or the process. That then leads or doesn't lead to a loyalty loop, and this can cut short the decision-making journey. Because once people start to get comfortable with the product, they start not to doing so much analysis, and they just jump in and buy. They become habitual. Finally, I want to show you this because this is something you should look at some point in time. This is a series of customer-assumed roles in the marketplace. Study this. Understand what these are. These will come up at a later date. So there we have it. That's what we kind of think about from consumer behavior. Now I'm going to show you this that you will see many times as you progress through your program. And that is the type of adopters when it comes to a product that is introduced to the market. Way over on the left, the early innovators, and then the second group is that early adopters, people that say, yeah, we got to have that thing. And then there's an early majority that either makes or breaks the product. And once you get to the early majority and they jump on board, you're in business. And then it matures and it starts to back off. But what we see on the right side of the chart are people that are kind of late laggards, waiting for proof to come before they buy the product. That then demonstrates the life cycle. And over on the left, we see the vertical, meaning that the amount of people that actually buy into the product. Here's an example of how that works for smartphones. And you think about that early growth period where people would line up outside the Apple store. It doesn't happen so much anymore. To see the latest and get the latest, and all the way down to the laggard who is just say, okay, I'm going to give up my my rotary dial and jump into the 21st century.